Hi, I'm Assemblywoman Kimberly Jean-Pierre, and I represent the Great District, the 11th Assembly District in the state of New York. I'm so honored and proud to partner with Community Watch with our great host, Bishop Andy Luter, who would bring you various elected officials to discuss their platform, who they are, so you could be able to know who are the great people that represent you in the different levels of government. It's an honor for me to partner with Community Watch to help you understand what's happening right here on Long Island, right here where you live in your community.
Hello, friends. Andy C. Luter here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Community Watch. Let me give a quick shout out to State Assemblywoman Kimberly Jean-Pierre and thank her for facilitating this platform so that we would have an opportunity to come and to share with you again. I am Andy C. Luter. I am your host and moderator for this weekly production of Community Watch. Now, this is a program that we put together so that we can introduce to you some of the personalities who impact the quality of life here on Long Island in general, but here on this particular cable system in particular. Today I have two amazing individuals in the persons of Lynn Boon and Robin Brown. And they're going to be talking with me today because what they have in common is that both of them are retired members of the New York Police Department. So you can imagine how intimidated I feel. I have two women who carry guns, and that makes it a most interesting kind of conversation. And when I was talking offset with Sister Brown, she said, not only do we carry guns, we know how to use them. So that's an additional moment of intimidation. But listen, thank you both for being here. Say hello to our audience. Let's begin with you, Lynn.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, and thank you, Bishop, for inviting us on Church Talk Radio. I'm excited about our conversation today, and with Robin here, so it's a good day.
Robin, say hello.
Hello, yes, it is a good day, good evening, good afternoon, whichever way that we're going to be having this viewed. I'm looking forward to this conversation with the Bishop.
Okay, and again, I am Andy C. Luter, and I am your host for Community Watch. This is a weekly television program that looks at various aspects of our community, and I attempt to introduce you to those individuals who you need to know. It is rather obvious and apparent that there is a pattern of brutality that is blanketing our country in the Midwest, the Far West, East Coast. There seemingly are incidents, one right after the other, that deal with police brutality and the victimization of people of color. And I've invited my two guests to come and to talk specifically about that. But before I jump into that conversation, I want to further acquaint you with the personalities who will be serving as my panel guests today. I want to begin with Lynn Boon and ask her to give us a biographical sketch as it relates to law enforcement and what was her path to law enforcement and some of her experiences.
So my path, I was recruited from college into NYPD. So I went into NYPD. I started out in the Bronx on patrol, and then I went into what we call the organized crime, and I worked in Queens. After leaving NYPD, I went on to LA. In California, I worked for the Inspector General, working on officer-involved shootings, investigating that, what we're actually talking about today. Returned back home. I'm now with the state doing fraud investigations.
Let me ask you, as a youngster growing up, one of the things that we're constantly asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we have a myriad of answers that we usually supply. Was law enforcement one of those things that you thought about or you anticipated as a youngster, as a child? Or is it something, or was it an opportunity that became available later on that you decided to seize and to take?
It was not something I thought about. I actually, it was an opportunity that presented itself, and I kind of went with some friends, took the test, and it kind of just opened up from there. But it wasn't something at that time that was the furthest thing from my mind at that time.
Okay, okay. Robin, talk to us about your path to law enforcement and how you got involved in what is obviously a somewhat odd profession for women of color. We have not seen that to a great extent. So we're curious as to how you ended up there.
My path to law enforcement, again, like with Lynn, I was in college, and a friend of mine was already on the job and sent me an application, so I filled it out and went through the process and wound up getting picked up to go into the academy. I started out in the 102nd Precinct in Queens. I got recruited to go into OCCB, organized crime, as an undercover. And I've been there ever since until retirement.
Okay, all righty. One of the things that we hear a great deal of is the Great Blue Wall. And let me just set as a premise for our conversation. If incidents that have resulted in death at the hands of the police was rare or a one-off kind of situation, I am certain that we would have a particular kind of attitude about it. But because it has occurred repeatedly, time and time again, that would suggest that there is a bit of a pattern that is involved. And one of the things that we constantly hear is how protective the culture is, the blue wall, so to speak. Now, my first question is whether or not that is a myth. Is that real, or is that something that has been manufactured because we like to binge on Law and Order on the weekends? Let me begin with you, Lynn.
The blue wall does exist. I will say that I look at it two ways it exists. It's like, I'll give you this example. If you are an accountant, do you go and share everything that you do at your job with the public? So there's a kind of a difference that even though you are a public servant, it's not something that it's shared openly with the public, just like any other job. But there's an expectation because of the standards in incidents that do happen that affect, citizens, that it should be more open. But it's just like any other job where you're keeping that within that organization. Okay. And it's a little tighter because of the sensitivity of what happens.
Robin, your experiences?
Yes, I agree with her. The blue wall does exist, and it's like you don't want to step out of the wall.
Okay.
Because
or from behind the wall.
Yes, because it's like
it's protective.
Yes, it's a protective area, and when you find yourself on the other side of that wall, even if you're in the right, but the wall is standing in a certain, taking a certain stance, then you're ostracized, and you will feel that wrath.
Now, I would imagine that both of you, and one of the reasons I was so anxious and excited about having you on the program today is because both of you are retired members of the police department. In your case, Lynn, how long has it been since you were active on the police force?
Well, technically I am active, but it's not with the city, it's with the state.
Okay.
So I will say I'm currently still active within the government system.
Okay, okay. But how about the New York Police Department? How long has it been since you were active?
It has been over 13 years.
13 years, okay. And in your case, Robin, you're a little more recent.
Yes.
Okay.
I retired February of 2019.
Okay, so that's...
So I'm very freshly retired.
Freshly retired.
You want a job.
So that prompts me to ask this question. 13 years, less than 2 years. What would you say, and I'm trying to give our audience a sense of the variety of perspective that both of you bring to the conversation. 13 years ago, I would imagine that the climate and the time was quite different than it has been or it is now or here of late. Talk to the New York Police Department that you left 13 years ago?
For me, I would say go back to the blue wall that does exist. I will go back to what we would call my sister in blue would say. There is a sense of retaliation if you do speak up. There is a strong camaraderie that exists, that only exists among each other because there are times when your life depends on the people you work with.
Sure, sure.
But so that is also a part of what goes on, because if you turn your back towards your brothers and sisters in blue, it may be a time when your life depends on their assistance. So you don't want to shake anything up so much, because it's a job where your life could be at risk, and you need the people you work with to keep that camaraderie strong, even if you don't agree with everything that they do.
Sister Robin, I am sure that you've had the occasion to talk to persons who have longevity or who had longevity on the force and whose careers go back many, many years. You left the force a little less than 2 years ago. What was the New York Police Department that you left 2 years ago? How would you describe it?
I mean, it's a good job, it's a good career, but just like with any job, I would say you get out what you put into it. Now, if you are just showing up, then really you're not getting anything out of the job. Like when I came on a job because I wanted to help people. Like that was innate, it was just in me. But some people come on a job because they want benefits, or, you know, it's something their father did, or it's something, you know, in their family. And I don't think that for some people their heart is not into it. And you can tell which ones love the job and which ones are just doing the job. It is a difference. So I'll go back to the blue wall. So if you're working with someone, and like she said, even if you don't agree with them, but we're all on the same job. So I may not agree with what this person does, but when we're out there in the street, we're one. So, you know, you going through the door, I'm going through the door with you. I'm making sure you come out. Hopefully you making sure I'm coming out too. You know, it's reciprocal.
Okay. Now that brings me to what I really want to talk about for perhaps the remainder of the time that we have together. And that is when I see the knee of a man on the neck of another, with no sense of sensitivity or regard for the value of life that knee is upon. There's a certain reaction, there's a certain civilian reaction that I have to that. And as I watch the videotape, that videotape helps to form my overall idea. Sister Boon, what did you see when you saw that same picture? I certainly can understand how people might interpret what they see in a different way, but I found it very interesting that in these latter cases, there were so many members of law enforcement who stepped forward to say, despite my being a member of law enforcement, that was wrong. I cannot agree with the life that was taken in that particular way.
What I saw was murder. I'll be quite honest. What he did was, the whole thing was unacceptable. I have not, still have a lot of friends in law enforcement, I have not known one person that will agree with that. And so what I seen was intentional. What I seen, the weight in his hands and his pockets was intentional. What I've seen too when his body was lifeless was intentional. The most disappointing thing for me was that no one stopped him, not even those around him. So that is the culture, maybe more so there. But what I saw was a total disregard for any human life.
Is there an unspoken rule that you do not interfere with an officer who is perhaps going, well, let me say it this way. Is there an unspoken rule that you don't interfere with another officer? Because as you said, there were several others standing around and no one initiated any intervention. Is that because the unspoken rule is that it's a laissez-faire or a hands-off kind of attitude?
In my opinion, I would say no, because I have intervened. And I know in situations people have stopped me.
From intervening or stopping you from putting your knee on the neck? Wait a minute. Let's see which one this is.
So I disagree with that. So I disagree with that because
Okay.
you have a right to say that's enough. Let's go. Get them up in the car. What have you? So I disagree. Someone should react, but I do understand that the officer Chavez was a training supervisor or training officer. So there may have been around him young rookies out of the academy that didn't know how to react. I cannot speak on all the details, but someone at that scene could have said, stop. And I'll speak on the Eric Gardner scene. You were still on the job at that time. Even for that, there was a supervisor there, a woman of color, who could have controlled that and told them to stop. I think it's a problem and a meltdown in the police department when we're watching brothers and sisters, black brothers and sisters, this treatment going on, and you have other brothers and sisters in uniform that don't speak up. And I have always been very boisterous, even in the police department, that is unacceptable. Because I look at it as that could be my mother, my sister, my brother, my child, and I would not let that person do it to my child. So for me, in uniform, someone should have stopped that from going on.
Sister Robin, what did you see when you saw these pictures that were spread all across America? It was horrific, but I'm anxious to know from an interior position, how did you interpret that situation?
When I saw that, I was heartbroken. I had to say that because, I even posted on one of my social media accounts, I said, where is the humanity? Like, where is the humanity? Like, how can the people around him, like, they were expressing, you know, he's not moving, he's not breathing, and other people were saying, well, how come those people that were standing there, they're videotaping, they didn't go intervene? Well, you can't go intervene a civilian police officers because they're the ones with the guns. You move in to go intervene, they're going to pull their gun out. And now you're like, okay, well, now what's going to go on? I'm trying to help this guy, but this officer may try to kill me for trying to help this man. Another thing, like she said, he was a training officer, so if these are, I think one of the officers, that was their second tour or their second day on the job, and the other ones, they were younger also. So they may have been looking to him like this is how we're supposed to police? Like, they may not have known, but in that instance, everybody knows right from wrong. And you know what he was doing was wrong. If you can feel the weight when you're making an arrest, you can feel the weight of the individual that you're arresting. So as he's giving up his last breath, or he's giving in, there comes a point where he's not moving. Like, that was the point where they're holding his legs down. You release all of that. You get off of this man. And they didn't even render aid to him. Like, that's why I was like, what? It was just inhumane to me. They wouldn't treat their animals the way they treated that man. Now, the officer that stood there and kept the people at bay, I got no words for him. He's as culpable as the one with the knee on the neck.
Sister Boon, and I'm going to ask both of you to be philosophical to some degree, because these incidents continue to occur almost everywhere. How do you explain that?
There's also There's also a us against them mentality that exists. Whether you say good against bad or black against white, that mentality exists. And in every police department we're talking about, there's racism that exists. I know when I was there personally, I felt it among myself. So I know being on the inside, I felt it. So I believe that around the world, what we're seeing, because of where we are and the climax of where we are with our current government, almost like giving a green light that it's okay, that now that they have the green light, because when George Floyd was murdered, it was okay, let's give the police departments from the top more money. They're doing a great job. That came from executive. So my saying that when there's not the coming from the top, saying we are not going to accept this, and we're getting the order from, saying it's okay. So now you have those people who are racist at heart prior to even joining a police department. They don't get racist when they get in the police department. They already come on, and in their mind they have this, oh, I'm just going to kill somebody. Somebody say something to me, I'm just going to shoot them. Someone look at me, I'm just going to shoot them. They have that mentality prior to being hired. So now when you get the green light, that mentality that they bring on instantly reacts, and it comes out. And that's what we're seeing. Those people that normally would maybe suppress that or may talk about it, but not act on it. Now, because of the racial tension that's going on between the police and the civilians, now they're jumping out, and you have more racial incidents across the country.
Sister Robin, I'm going to ask you a similar question, and that is from a philosophical point of view. When you see the myriad and the high number of incidents such as this going on, not in just one section of the country, but literally all across the country, how do you explain that?
Social media. Because me personally, I feel that it's just showing us what's been going on.
Okay.
Now, these, you can, whether it's a major city or a small town, these things have been going on since years.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, you can go back to the history of what the police department was, what they were really meant to do, and how they came into policing. They were, the history of the police department wasn't just law and order. The police department came together to catch slaves, to catch the runaway slaves and bring them back. That's how that all came to be. So it all just comes to fruition right before our very eyes, because when you see, whether it's Ahmaud Arbery jogging, by himself on a street, or you have this man in Rochester, they're calling for assistance, they're asking the police to help this man, they wind up killing this man. I mean, whether they want to say it was accidental or what, there comes a point where, in that case, again, the Rochester case, inhumane. It's snowing outside. He's naked. Now, if these police officers aren't equipped to handle the job, which I don't think some of them are. That's another problem. Whoever's doing the psychological, they're not seeing these faults that these men or women have coming into the job, and you're hiring these people, and they have these deficiencies, and it's just coming out as they're performing their duties. What happened to that man in Rochester shouldn't have happened. I mean, he goes from his family's calling for help to he's dead, all because you saw he was complicit. They told he laid down, put his arms on. Okay, he was spitting at them. Okay, so they put the mask on him. So that's the spit mask. Once he gets in the ambulance or whatever, he's out of the custody of them. That should have came off. Or, I mean, there was no one going to put clothes on him or anything like that. I feel that, unfortunately, when some of these members get on the job, they don't even see people of color, meaning blacks, as people.
That's right.
Okay.
They see us as animals, and I have to say, in working, I've overheard them call us animals. So, as she was saying, there is racism in the police department, just like there's racism in the world. Now, if people want to, say that there is no racism, you're not going to find a black person that's going to say there's no racism. That's white people saying that, and they're saying that because they don't feel it. It's not directed towards them, but they're not having to deal with someone looking at them or someone moving a certain kind of way when you're coming into an elevator or you're walking into a store. You don't get those reactions. We're the ones that's getting those reactions. And for what? We're doing nothing. We go shopping just like you do. We go to the beach like you do. We want to work like you do. We want to live in a nice neighborhood just like everybody else. But somewhere in their mind, they feel like they're in the upper echelon and they should have somebody beneath them. And that just happens to be us.
Sure.
But that's not happening. We're not taking that anymore.
Sister Lynn, I want to kind of piggyback on what Sister Robin just raised, because I was extremely disturbed here of late to hear, coming out of Washington, D.C., you referred to it as the executive, but statements being made that systemic racism does not exist, and that there perhaps will be an executive order forbidding any training for unconscious bias. Now, that's on the federal level, and fortunately, that can't be implemented on the state, county, and the more local level, but it is a precedent that's being set even on the federal level. How do you respond when you hear the suggestion that systemic racism does not exist and that there's no need for unconscious bias, training for unconscious bias?
I think that is, it's very hard to even speak on that, because I think that everyone knows that systematic racism exists. If you go into any town throughout the United States, what is the system? A broken educational system, a poor healthcare system. You have more fast food restaurants. Therefore, you have more health conditions. You have low-paying jobs. You have, the system that exists within the culture, of course, is systematic racism. That didn't build itself. So we all know that that's why to say there's not systematic racism. I think that's an election push. Mm-hmm. It's a push for those people who are saying that are against the Democrats and those other ones who are hiding and may have racial agendas to say, yeah, let's go for it. So guess what? We're no longer intimidated by the blacks who are successful. We're no longer intimidated to those who are doing well, because now they don't have opportunities they may have had because they are in a systematic system. So now if we take away any type of fair play, then again it's pushing that agenda to those who don't want blacks or people of color to succeed in any way. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to say, hey, we'll keep them oppressed, because we're going to disregard anything they ever been through and any systems that's in place to make them fail by saying it don't exist. Mm-hmm. So that's, to me, that's a political agenda to push the vote a certain way.
Sister Robin, I'm going to give you the last word on this in the final few seconds that we have. You said you don't know of any black persons who would say that racism doesn't exist. And so why do you think that there is this remnant, there's this remaining attitude on the part, not of our community, but other communities that want to suggest that it doesn't exist?
Well, the other communities that would say that it doesn't exist, that's because they're benefiting from they're benefiting from it. Mm-hmm. So you know, I don't want to call out some of my Hispanic brothers and sisters, but there's a few that I've worked with, and just because they are light, they like kind of hid the fact that they were Spanish in the office, but you know, so they could pass. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, if you're Puerto Rican, be proud that you're Puerto Rican. If you're from DR, like you're Dominican, be proud that you're Dominican. No, they wouldn't speak Spanish in front of because they wanted to be accepted. And I'm like, no, forget that. I'm black all day, every day. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to hide it. But you feel that the tension and the difference, because I'm going to go back to the police department just for a quick second. You know, when you're around a supervisor or even other cops who are white and they don't like you, you know it. You feel it, you know, and they can try to hide it any way they want to, but you feel that presence. And I had to deal with that, and I felt that throughout my career, you know. I mean, I got through it because I wasn't going to let that stop me from doing what I wanted to do and what I came to do. But I've had some problems because I was letting them know that, no, I don't care if you are a supervisor. Like I said, I'm black every day, all day. So if you don't like me because I'm black, just don't like me.
Well, friends, there you have it. This has been an enormous, wonderful conversation that we've been having with Lynn Boon and Robin Brown. I am your host, Andy C. Luter. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to take you back to Kimberly Jean-Pierre for her closing comments. And remember, we're here every week, and we look forward to seeing you real soon.
Hi, I'm Assemblywoman Kimberly Jean-Pierre, and I represent the 11th Assembly District. I hope you had a great time watching Community Watch, and I hope you were able to have a deeper understanding of the various elected officials and know who they are and got a chance to meet them throughout the different segments of shows with our great host, Bishop Andy Luter. Keep looking out for your local elected officials and stay informed.